All right, welcome to the session using the iPad as a classroom management tool. In this session, I'm going to be covering a bunch of tools and places where you can find things to help you be more efficient in classroom management in your classroom. This session is going to be covering tips and strategies and tools for all levels. You're going to have to find things that work for you, and as you notice around the screen, there's some of the apps and tools that we'll be covering. You're going to find that with classroom management and a lot of the tools that I talk about, that a lot of them have similar apps that do a lot of the same thing. You don't need to just stick with the ones that I show you. There's usually a lot of related apps that'll do these types of tips and things that we're going to look at throughout this session. So feel free to explore the App Store, search on Google for whatever it is you're looking for, and you're going to find a lot of apps and a lot of things out there that can help you be more efficient with classroom management. With that, we'll kind of jump right into some of the apps. I'll show you how they work, and we'll go from there. One of the first apps that we're going to look at is a timer app. Now again, there's going to be a lot of apps that do some sort of similar function to this, but this is one of the first ones that I found that I really like. It's very simple to use, and it's available on the App Store. The app we're looking at here is going to be called Stop Go. Now I'm going to kind of show you how this app works. So with Stop Go, when I open it up here, it's going to be a very simple stoplight feature. Now, some of the things that you can do is you can set how long each time goes. So right now I would have it set for a couple of minutes. It would count down. For the purposes of showing this, I'm just going to set them to 10 seconds here and to 5 seconds, and I'm just going to start my timer. So again, my timer is going to count down. You're going to be able to see how long you get on each section. It's going to count down there, and then at the end of each time, it's going to give a little signal. It'll beep, and it'll move to your next timer. So this is one way for students to be able to just kind of see that visual representation of how much time they have left. They know, they kind of have that final expectation of what to do on each level. Now you do have the option to set no time if you just want to manually be able to show, the different stoplights. Maybe each one of those would represent something different. This would be a really good app to maybe show on the smartboard, something you could control, from your iPad. If you had Air Server up, students would know exactly how much time they have to complete a certain task before they need to move on to another task. One of the ideas that comes to my mind is when they have independent time, if they know they have 10 minutes to work on something, and then they have maybe 2 minutes to clean up, and then by the time it gets to the red light, they need to be back at their desk. You could set the 10-minute timer, the 2-minute timer, and then by the time it's red, they need to be all done. Again, there's a lot of various timer apps. You could certainly stick with the basic timer on the iPad, but this is just a good way, especially for younger students, to be able to just kind of see that visual representation of how much time they actually have remaining. The next step we're going to look at here is to help with noise control. Now this is a big one that I think a lot of people would love a good tool to help control. So the app we're going to look at is Too Noisy. Now there's a free version and the paid version, and I'll kind of highlight the differences when I get through this app. The free version is the one I'm going to demonstrate first. So when I open up the free version of Too Noisy, this is exactly what I'm going to look like. Now, as I start to talk, that timer or that little meter is going to start to go up. So the students would be able to see kind of the noise level where it's at, and you can set some different settings there that we're going to look at. So the character has, it kind of goes through the stages of the happy, the in-between, he's kind of getting a little worried, and then as it goes to red, all right, gets a little less excited. Now here's the settings. I can change the sensitivity. That's kind of where I have the ability to set how easily it gets higher. I'll show you what the Pro version looks like here. With the Pro version, you're able to do things like set rewards. If you wanted to have a certain duration of time where students could earn a reward, that you're able to build that right into the app. With the Pro version, with the free version, you saw ads that pop up. The Pro version eliminates a lot of those apps, or a lot of those ads, and there's just a few other functions that go with Too Noisy Pro. So as you can tell, this is a very simple app just to help control noise. There's not a lot of settings and a lot of things that you're going to be able to mess around with. It's something that you could implement right away from day one. It would be especially important. Students would kind of know the expectation of how noisy they can be as a class, and it's a good way to work in some rewards and some things based on how well students can control themselves. Again, there's going to be a ton of apps that have some sort of noise feature like this. If you are looking for stuff, you could hit the related button. You'd be able to see different apps that are closely related to this. Find one that you like, you can give that one a try as well. Now, one of the next ones we're going to show you, people should be fairly familiar with how the app actually works, but I'm going to talk about how we can use Notability to help us in classroom management. Student notes is one thing that I think is becoming more and more important, and I'm going to show you kind of how we've utilized student notes in third grade. Now, our gradebook system usually takes care of the behavior aspect of tracking student behavior. While this is necessarily true, I know not all teachers document every single conversation and every single situation that comes up in their classroom, but it's really important that when a time comes when you're talking to parents that you can keep them informed of all the stuff that maybe has happened, good and bad, with a student. And using Notability to track some student notes is going to be one way that we can do that. So I'm going to show you kind of one way to maybe utilize Notability here. So I've got it opened up, and I'm just going to show you kind of how we've got it set up. I have different students, all a different subject, and I have the ability to add different students as my subjects. I can store different documents in there, like right here I have a Fontes Pinnell reading level assessment that I could store there easily. Any documents that I want to store, I would be able to do that. Now the next two are the ones that I'm going to show you. So I have Bill's here, who I have a behavior document started on him that we're going to look at. So if I have a behavior document and I just keep some basic notes, I would have the ability to just kind of jot down some of the things. Maybe it's not something that I put into this gradebook system, but I just wanted to keep some notes in case I start to see patterns or parents start to have questions about repeated behaviors. I have this in my back pocket, a place where it's easy to access, it's easy to type in, and it's a good way to kind of keep notes on everything. So I kept my notes there on student behavior. Now I go down another student, I have some academic notes. It would give me the opportunity to just kind of remind myself as I'm going through maybe where a student has struggled or maybe where a student has really done well. That way when it comes to working on my grades or report cards or anything, conferences, I would be able to pull those up and just kind of remind myself like, hey, here's the things that have gone well, or maybe the things that we need to continue to work on. So ideas like this, Notability is a good way to just organize those documents and can be a really good way for you to track student notes and just overall use it to help benefit your classroom. The next one I think is really important here, behavior tracking. The iPad can be a really good tool for tracking behavior. We talked about like the student notes, but if you wanted to just have a different way to track behavior, Class Dojo is a great one to be able to do this. Again, there's other apps out there. I believe there's a program called Class 123. Same idea, allows you to do kind of the same things that Class Dojo. There are a lot of features here in Class Dojo that I'm going to kind of pick through, so I'll show you kind of what it looks like and how it can be utilized in a classroom. Give a special hat tip to the 6th grade teachers, Mr. Dahlman and Mrs. Schwankel. That's kind of where the idea of Class Dojo and utilizing it in classroom came from. So, Class Dojo, I'm going to look something like this. Got a few notifications here I'm going to take care of. All right, now the first things first, I already went ahead and set up my class. So you can see they kind of have like an alien creature type feature that the kids would be able to see and mess with a little bit. But my classroom is already set up. You're going to see some of the features. If I click on a student, so I'll click on Aubrey here, I am able to add positive points. So for myself, I do a clip system, so the students are able to earn 1 point, 2 points if they moved up to field goal, 5 points if they move their clip all the way up to Heisman. I also gave bonus points. They come kind of with preset items that you can select. Otherwise, if you wanted to add your own, skills, I'll be able to do that as well, and I'm going to kind of show you how to do that feature. So if I decided that Aubrey, moved her clip up, you could see that it added 2 points to her total. And now I'm going to show you kind of what the opposite side of that is. So I picked Jovi. Jovi did something not so good. So I picked Jovi and it gave her -2 points. So you can see Aubrey there with 2, Jovi with -2. It's just one way to kind of track students and how they're behaving. Now there are some added features here. If you want to be more specific about what happened there, I'm going to show you how you can document those as well. So for Morgan, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to add a post. So I add a post for Morgan. I can just type in something like she had a great day today, and then I'm going to be able to assign her some points. So I post that under Morgan's, and I would be able to, yep, there I go, give Morgan a point, and I would just be able to do that. So I'm just going to go through and kind of assign some more points. You can kind of see the running total of what all the points that students have. Just a great way to do that. I assigned a class point, and you can kind of see the history up there in the top left corner. One of the next features that we're going to look at here is the ability to get parents involved here. And this is a good one for behavior. So I have this pulled up here. It's a great way for you to post updates in your classroom if you wanted to use this as a parent communication tool. That's something new that they've just kind of rolled out there. But you have the ability to invite parents. They can see the updates for their child, not for anybody else's, and it's just a good way for them to stay involved. So again, my whole class there on the right side. I could add parents. I can do that manually, or I can invite them. So there's some different ways to get them involved. Next, we're going to look at, there's my notifications. That's updates from the app, just kind of a way for them to keep people involved. I have the ability to assign groups. So if I wanted to put students in groups and then assign them points, I can do that. So if I hit add group here, I'm just going to add a couple of students first. So it looks like I pulled out, I'll pull Aubrey, Dustin, and Jordan. And then I'm just going to call them group number 1. So I created a group, and now I have the ability to click on that group. I can add individual points. I can add team points, however I want to do it. Great teamwork, and I'm able to move on. I'll jump back to the Students tab here, and I'll show you how to add different skills for students to be able to look at. So I pulled up Lexi here. If I hit Edit Skills, and then I can add a skill right over here, I could name it anything I want. So I'm just going to name it New Task, just to give an example. I can choose the amount of points, and then it wants me to pick an image. So I can find an image, or I can just take one of the pro-created ones. I could add a negative skill, a needs work skill, but I'm just going to stick with that right there. So that's kind of Class Dojo, just a way to track behavior, both positive and negative. For myself, and I know with the 6th grade at one time, the way we kind of made this come full circle is we would award tickets. So that number with each student was how many tickets that they had earned. They could use those tickets to buy different items in the classroom, whether it was a prize box, whether it was some other reward. Students would be able to use that type of thing, and we kind of use it as our classroom money, classroom management system, something that's worked pretty well. As the season or the school year got going, something that they became more familiar with, and the students kind of caught on, and we had a whole system that became less work over time for myself because the students were so invested and were able to just kind of pick it up and knew exactly what it was to look for. So again, this is Class Dojo. There's other programs and stuff that do similar things, but this one has been a great one for my classroom, and I know for some other ones as well. The next one is a really important one that a lot of people at our school are utilizing, but I think some people are still not quite aware of completely, so I'm going to cover it. We're going to talk about some good teacher, student, parent communication tools. The one I'm going to show here is Remind. I have a list of kind of some other ones that do the same thing that are becoming more and more evolved as time goes. So we'll take a look at Remind just really briefly, and then I'll talk about some of the other communication tools that I've started to see and use, and I'll tell you why those may be beneficial. So we'll take a quick look at Remind here. So when I open up Remind, you're going to see the classes that I've created all along the left side there. So my class from last year, I'm able to add parents manually. I'm able to send them a link to have them join, or I am able to show them how to join if I had everybody together. Now, why Remind is so nice is parents are allowed to pick the way that they get messages. So they can download the app and get notifications that way. They can get messages sent to their phone, like text messages, or if they still want them to come as emails, then they can do that as well. Why Remind is such a great tool is it's much faster and much easier to use rather than going to an email, finding everybody's email and sending it out that way. Especially with students, most students don't check their email on a regular basis. This is a much easier way for them to get messages and notifications. So I'll just kind of show you what each of those looks like. If I wanted to add people directly, I could pick them out. If I wanted to send them a link, I would just copy that link and send it out to them. Or if I had them, I could show them that and they could add that, go through those little instructions there. Down below there, I'm able to see all the people that are in my class. So when I send out a message, those are all the people that get my messages. What I'll show next is just kind of the main announcement page. That's where all the notifications have been sent out. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to send out a message to the people that are in my group. So when I hit the little new message button, I'm able to send an announcement that goes to everybody that's in my class. I could pick a group conversation, which allows me to pick just a certain number, or if I needed to send an individual message, I could do that as well. So the last two are kind of new features that they've just been working with. They are careful because it's supposed to be a teacher-student communication tool. That Remind is really careful about the way teachers and students interact. So there are some safeguards in place there. If I add an announcement, I have some abilities there. I'm just going to type in my message, no school tomorrow. I can add a picture in from my camera roll if I needed to include pictures, if I wanted to send something out there. I could audio record a message if I wanted to add an audio recording for any reason. The one I like is the schedule feature. I can schedule a message to go out later, so I'll send this for, let's say, we'll go 5 minutes from now. So in 5 minutes, my message will send out. And then the last one is a feature that they are really proud of. It's the ability for messages to translate automatically for you. So by default, it's set to English. If I had a group that maybe only spoke Spanish, I could send them a message and they would still get it. So I've sent my message. It's going to go out in 5 minutes from now. So I've got it set there. There's my message. For myself here, I'm going to go ahead and delete that because I don't want to send that message out. But I have the ability to schedule those out. That's really valuable for myself. Someone who is busy after school, I don't always remember to send out those messages. Sometimes I like to schedule my messages to go out later so that they can kind of remember those. And the last part I'm going to show here is kind of some of the settings that you can look at on your own account. There are some nice things that you can kind of change to customize for yourself. So if I click on myself and get my settings there, I'm able to schedule a time for when people can initiate conversations with me if they needed to do that. It shows my classes, when I'm available for people to talk. I can set a profile picture if I want to do that. Just a few different things for you to kind of customize and help make this the best tool that works for you. So again, this is Remind. Like I said, there's a lot of people, a lot of sports teams, a lot of classes that use Remind. It's a great communication tool that does not involve giving out your cell phone number, but it lets you use those types of tools to easily reach parents and students and have them see those messages as well. Now, there are some apps that continue to kind of develop and are similar to Remind in a lot of ways. Some of the apps, one that I featured in the top apps for both K6 and 712 is called Class Tree. Works very similar to Remind. The only feature that I think is kind of cool is your ability to upload a PDF and have parents sign electronically. So permission slips, some of those types of things, parents could sign electronically. A lot of the other features work the same way, sharing video, pictures, updates. You can make simple survey questions, so you have the ability to, get feedback from parents about different things, and that's called Class Tree. There are a couple other ones too. Band, the name of the app is called Band. It allows you to do a lot of the same types of things. Has a couple of cool different features there. And then the other one that I've been utilizing a lot is called GroupMe. Now this is a little more of a group chat type deal. It's everybody has the same ability there. The only difference is it allows people to either communicate through using the app or by using their cell phone number, but without giving out people's cell phone numbers. So that's called GroupMe. You can do different things in there, and that has some features as well. So there's some different ways for teacher, student, parent communication tools. Hopefully we all look at ways to improve our teacher, student, and parent communication, and I think utilizing one of these tools is a great way to do that. Now, this app I'm not going to be able to demo because it's a really inclusive app. Now, the app is called Classroom, and it's made by Apple. It's kind of in response to Google Classroom, some of the other apps, the learning management systems that are out there. This is kind of a one-stop place to manage students. Now, there are some tricks here before even trying to use Classroom. It needs to be run through your MDM, so that would be something for our tech guys to be able to do. There's some obstacles to clear before that can be set up. But what I do want to point out is some of the cool features that are able to be used through Classroom. So things like being able to send out documents or images or whatever it is directly to student iPads. So the way it works is when students are in a class, you basically have control over their device. So you can send out stuff, you can have students send you documents, you can launch apps or websites or books on students' devices with a tap, you can lock them into an app to help the student focus, you can make them pause or refocus during class. Some of the other things you can do is you can view their screen to see what they're working on. You can show their screen if you really wanted to show maybe a student who is demonstrating something correctly. And that would kind of help students focus on what it is, the task that they're working on. It's really easy to share documents and links. AirDrop is kind of a seamless opportunity there. You're able to just work through a lot of different things with Classroom by Apple. Again, there's a lot of things to kind of work through and navigate to get this one set up, but it is something that is out there, and if something that you wanted more control over the student iPad use in your classroom, could be worked out with a little preparation. So again, I don't have this app to be able to utilize right now. It's called Classroom by Apple, but it is out there and has some of those features that I just discussed. And the last app I'm going to show here is a student picker. Now there's a ton of different student pickers out there. I just picked one that I have used in the past. It is called Randomly. It looks like this right up here. So Randomly is an app that I use, and I'm going to show you kind of what that looks like here. So with Randomly, I open it up here. I've already created my class. I've added my students. So there's my class. And now when I click on that, I have the ability to add or delete students, and then I can randomize who I pick. So if I click on the randomize button there, I have the ability to pick students that are uncalled, or I can pick on anyone. So I'm going to go through a couple of uncalled ones here. It'll just cycle through people that it has not called. Now if I decide that I want to call on anyone, it will randomize out of the whole group. As you can see, I hit it a bunch of times. You should see the same name pop up more than once. With 17 names, it's a good way to just make sure, students sometimes feel like you call on the same ones all the time. This is a good way to kind of eliminate that. It's also a good way to make sure, all students are kind of paying attention. You just want to be careful, not to call on a student who really maybe would have some issues with being called on when they're not expecting it, but it's just a good way. One other thing I've done with this is I have made groups. So down at the bottom, you're allowed to create groups. And there's different ways you can do them. You can tell how many groups in your class, or you can put how many students you would like in each group. So if I put 4 students in each group, now with 17, it's going to be an odd number, so there's going to be one where I can just add in that student into another group. But this is just a good way, again, if you just want quick groups, eliminates you having to do the work if you are okay with the results, if you need to kind of jumble them around. I know there are some apps that you can set specific rules, like these 2 students absolutely cannot be together. This app unfortunately doesn't have that feature, but I have seen it with other random picker apps. So this is kind of randomly, just a bunch of ways to kind of save some time for you and just, yeah, make yourself more efficient. So student pickers is a good way to kind of do that, and randomly is the one that I have picked out for you. I'm just going to share some final tips for using the iPad as a classroom management tool. Now, there are a lot of apps and tools and kind of different ways to use or kind of work with classroom management that I haven't shown, but I just want to kind of throw some ideas out there. So the first one is there are a lot of apps to control screen time. A lot of those apps are designed for parent controls, but they can be utilized in the student scenario too. So you can control, which apps students have access to by setting different passcodes and things like that. And there's just a lot of ways to control how much screen time students get. You can set different, I've seen apps that can control like the time, how much time students get. It'll have a countdown of how much time they get, and then it'll lock them out of the app until a passcode is entered. I could see, teachers, especially at the primary age, setting rules on screen time and things like that. They have ways for students to earn more screen time, so that just kind of works on that reward feature that I've seen people have used in schools before. The next one that a lot of people recommend, just the formative assessment tools, making sure that you use those tools to kind of help speed your classroom along. It's a good way to collect responses right away and be able to eliminate the time, the extra time that sometimes classroom management issues come up. So things like Socrative, Plickers, any Kahoot quizzes. There's tons and tons of tools out there for you to collect formative assessment. You're looking at like Google Forms, different tools like that that can help you collect data quickly, and it's easy for you to set up, easy for students to access, and it's just a great way for you to collect data and information quickly, and so that you can continue to move on with whatever it is you're working. One of the tips that I have read about that I kind of thought was interesting is utilizing Siri in your classroom. A lot of time as you're busy and you're running from place to place and you're working with students, sometimes you kind of want to make a note to maybe come back to something or to work with a student, or you need to remind yourself about a student who needs to leave. A lot of people just try and remember those, or they write themselves a quick note, but a lot of things can happen. Utilizing Siri in your classroom to just remind you of things like, Siri, we have a fire drill at 2:30 today, please remind me. Things like that, Siri is great for. They'll remind you at that time. It's just a great way. It's a click of a button, record your voice, and they set that automatic reminder, which is really cool. So don't forget about Siri. They can be a really helpful, really fast way to work with some classroom management. And the last thing I can tell you is just searching the App Store or searching on Google is a great way to just kind of find more information about classroom management tools. There's a lot of great things that people out there are doing. You just kind of have to look for them. I just gave you a very basic view of different ways or different ideas to think about classroom management. And the biggest thing for me is when you work with a tool, whether it's Remind or Class Dojo, if it's working for you, you got to make sure you stick to it. If you can stick with an app to where it becomes a habit in your classroom, the kids will pick up on it, the parents will come to expect it, and it just gets easier and easier as you go if you make that conscious effort to use the app and make sure people are involved. So the last thing we'll do is we'll cover the requirements that are needed to get the professional development hour and the professional development pay. And then you can complete those requirements on your own time and go from there. So here are the requirements to get your professional development pay and to get your credit. View the video, which obviously at this point you have done that. What I would like from you is to choose some of the apps that we've tried, whether it's the ones specifically highlighted in the video that you just watched or something that is closely related to them. I would like you to try a couple of them, just give them a shot, peek at them a little bit, Find something that you kind of identify, maybe a situation in your classroom that you want to be a little bit better at, and think about how you can find a tool to help you with that. Once you've done that, given a couple of them a try, you can go to Schoology. There's a discussion question posted there. Answer the discussion question, and that's it. You'll receive credit for this session. That's all there is to it. So go through those steps. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and there's something from here that you can pick out to help you be a little bit better in your classroom management this upcoming school year. If there's any other tools or anything that you can think of that are really good for classroom management, feel free to share those on the discussion board. And thank you guys for attending this session.